Good morning. I have the pleasure of speaking to you today. I pray that God gives me the words to deliver the message that I intend. I am going to start it out with a story. Okay? This is from my journal, when I kept a journal, and I'm just going to read it to you because I like the way it was said. I was a football hero in the 9th grade, a few years ago. We were facing an undefeated arch rival near the end of the season, and we were up by 2 points with less than 2 minutes left in the game. But the Stowe Bulldogs had possession of the ball deep in our territory, and we, the Talmadge Trojans, were making a goal line defense. We knew that a field goal would not likely end our dreams of victory, since few kickers were accurate enough in junior high school to make such a kick. We knew that our chances depended upon stopping the Bulldogs' relentless and battering ground attack, and my entire focus was on thanking God that I was second string. Stowe had a proud tradition, especially in terms of running backs. Larry Csonka was a number 1 draft pick, a focal point of the undefeated 1972 Miami Dolphins, 2-time Super Bowl champion, 1972 and 1973, and Super Bowl VII MVP. He was inducted to the Football Hall of Fame in 1987 and is one of only 3 Miami Dolphins whose jersey has been retired. He was also the starting fullback for the Stowe Bulldogs just a decade before his Super Bowl championships. Stowe had been known for their punishing ground game ever since. From the bench, I cringed at the beating our middle linebackers were taking down after down, but somehow they kept standing. My heart skipped a beat when one was slow to get up after the 3rd down. I thought I would soil myself when I heard the coach call my name and for me to go in for him. Crap! I just knew their fullback would break every bone in my body as his cleats used my spine as a runway to their victory. I do not remember running onto the field to take my place. Perhaps I was dragged there kicking and screaming. That was probably more to the point. I was in a trance, being only passively aware of their quarterback barking his cadence. But before I knew it, both middle guards were heading directly for me, indicating that the play was headed my way, and in an attempt to exploit the weakest link in our line, me. I had a glimmer of hope that these guys might push me out of the way before this freight train put me in traction. But I wasn't pushed anywhere. I felt someone's head go between my legs, and my limp body was carried for a short distance on his shoulders. Unfortunately, I rolled off his back and ended up flat on my back on the ground. I saw the fullback change direction to avoid some of our defenders and realized that I was about to be trampled. I coiled my body into a fetal position to minimize the damage. I felt a dull jolt and then heard a whistle blow. The play had ended, and I was still somehow alive. The fullback had tripped over my body and was down. I stood and I was shocked to see that I was being cheered and celebrated as the hero, even though I had done nothing to make the play. In fact, I had done all I could to avoid it. Of course, I never admitted to that. Now, you might be asking why I chose to play football if I feared the consequences so dramatically. Well, I was probably 13 when my family took a trip to Annapolis, where is the site of the the United States Naval Academy in Annapolis. And I was so taken with it that I had decided right then and there that I was going to be a midshipman. I was going to be a cadet in Annapolis. Unfortunately, in order to get to Annapolis, you have to have a congressional appointment. And one of the things that is required, more or less, or at least it was in those days, was they wanted to see that you lettered in a couple of varsity sports. So I played football, terrified. I was on the track and field team, and this is for a guy who absolutely, the worst thing in the world was running. I hated to run. I tried the shot put for a while, but as you can tell, I'm not all that big, so I wasn't very successful at that. I was a pretty good wrestler, but I was probably the most inflexible person ever born on this earth. So it was I had to relearn how to wrestle for the most part. So I tried. But those dreams of attending the Naval Academy ended when I discovered, to my shock and dismay, that I had a natural ability and proclivity towards fine and performing arts. And believe it or not, the military academies, they prefer engineering and science. So that kind of like, no, I don't think we want anybody that has a theater degree here. And okay, so what's the point of me sharing all of this story with you? Well, first of all, I was led to serve my football team, okay? I was definitely out of my comfort zone. I was reluctant to serve. I was successful despite my reluctant skills and talents. I was successful, probably more so lucky. And most importantly, God protected me and saw me through that ordeal. Oh, I'm glad you realized I spoke right over that. Okay, fast forward almost a decade. I graduated, I don't know how many of you realize this, but I graduated from, well, let's say it's an infamous, well, at least for older people, younger people might not remember, but I graduated from Kent State University. Where was the site of the Vietnam protests that ended up in 4 students killed and 9 wounded by the Ohio National Guard. And I got my degree in theater there. But so that I could sort of have a hope of eating for the rest of my life, I also did something that very few theater majors would ever do. I also was in ROTC and received my commission in the United States Air Force that way. So I left Ohio in January of 1982 for my new career as an Air Force officer. And I had leased a brand new, go ahead and change the slide, Ford Mustang to get me to training. That's 1982, by the way. That's the way they looked then. I I leased this car to get me to, it was like 6 months of training, first in Panama City, Florida, and then Phoenix, Arizona, then back to Ohio before I was shipped out to Hamelin, Germany. Hamelin, yes, where the Pied Piper came from. Okay, that sounds like a great plan, right? Well, I often wondered what I was thinking when I leased a car with a manual transmission and I had no idea how to drive one. So, you're very quick. So you can imagine the laughter of all the salesmen on the floor, on the lot there, as I was shaking and starting and going. I just couldn't drive the thing at all. And then they were horrified as I approached this 4-line, heavily traveled road right outside the dealership. And of course, as soon as I got into the road, I stalled, and everybody, oh. But by the time I left Ohio, I had mastered that clutch. Now, this sort of illustrates a theory that Pastor Jeff has used a few times over the years, and that is in an evolving psychological model known as the 4 stages of competency. Next slide, please. So you've heard, you may remember him talking about this before. We start out with the unconscious and we don't know that we're not competent. Just like when I got this stick shift that I had no idea how to use. And then you move on to conscious incompetence. By the time that car stalled in the middle of the road, I was very much aware that I had no idea what I was doing. Then we go to conscious competent. All of a sudden, I started to get the hang of it and everything else. And then you go to unconscious competence. I was better than I thought I was. And then conscious, unconscious competence. It's a self-learning model. And this is very similar to, I'm doing not what I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to stand here. But as a junior high school teacher, I was always walking everywhere on around the classroom. So, this is similar to something that I learned in an executive leadership course through the Army. They called the freeze-thaw theory. And basically what that was about was that you practice something daily through routine, and all of a sudden it got so routine to you that you got extremely competent at it. And your confidence grew as a result, and that froze into your abilities. But, of course, life changes, and once certain things change, what is now frozen thaws, and you go back to the beginning again. You have to relearn how to do something so that you're once again competent. Make sense? Okay, moving right along. So, in terms of this, of the car that was just up there, I was once again called to serve, right? In Florida and Arizona. I was out of my comfort zone, meaning I had to travel all those miles driving something that I had no idea how to drive, but I got better. I should have been reluctant to drive it, but I was too stupid to realize that. I was successful despite my reluctance, skills, and talents, and God protected me. He saw me through the ordeal. Okay, next, please. Have you ever been asked to do something that you felt completely unqualified to do. That's a daily occurrence for me. Have you ever been gently nudged to work with children or perhaps young adults, teenagers, and you feel that you're not yet ready for that? Or perhaps, as in my case, that you're beyond that, that's no longer part of your abilities or in your wheelhouse. Have you ever been asked to lead a project at work and feel that you don't have the experience or talent or abilities to handle that? Or have you ever felt that you're being led to lead perhaps a Bible study or some small group in church or whatever, but you feel that your abilities or your knowledge, theological knowledge, you don't think that you could do it well enough. So you feel reluctant to do it. I think I'm correct in assuming that that's true with most of us, that we all have areas where we're asked to serve in some capacity and it's totally out of our comfort zone and we just don't want to go there. Happens all the time. All right, next slide, please. Now, throughout the Bible, we see a multitude of ordinary people constantly being challenged by God, and they question their ability to get the job done. And what they all have in common is the sense that surely there is someone better to do this, somebody more qualified, someone who is just better at it than I am. Well, certainly Gideon felt the same thing when God chose him to save his people. Next slide. In Judges 6:15, the NIV says, "Pardon me, my Lord," Gideon replied, "but how can I save Israel? My clan is the weakest, and I don't even remember how to say that. Manasseh, and I am the least in my family." Next slide, please. And Moses doubted his ability to lead his people from bondage, despite his storied history in the Egyptian kingdom. "Pardon your servant, Lord. Please send someone else, not me." Not unlike my football experience or my driving experience, although much more consequential. Next slide, please. We each have specific gifts and talents with which we should serve God. Some of those gifts and talents we might not be even aware of ourselves, but we certainly know they are certainly known to God. He knows what each of us are capable of doing and certainly supports us in doing those things. God doesn't mind that you don't always have the confidence to get things done in the way that he wants you to do them. Confidence beside the point. In fact, he just knows that just know that he wants it. The only way you will rely on him instead of yourself is when you feel incapable or incompetent. So that's exactly why God likes for us to feel uncomfortable when asked to do something that we don't know if we can do. Because all of a sudden, just like me here right now, You have to trust that God will get you through it and give you the right words or give you the right ability or give you the right talent to get something done that maybe you are the best one to do for one reason or another. I mean, I'm constantly seeing people on television that, or in life, that I think, why doesn't that person just do everything? They're so competent and so able. But then I think of other times in my life where I've seen, like I have a brother-in-law, some of you don't realize, that is a pastor. And he is in Ohio. He, when he was young, was a heroin addict. And he was saved from that. He was delivered from that. And the really amazing thing about him is that he did not experience withdrawal once he found the Lord and was saved and decided to give it up, the addictions, the heroin and everything else. He didn't go through withdrawal at all, which is, that's medically impossible, isn't it? But it happened with him. He is definitely what you would say is an imperfect person. But I can tell you that he is one of the most powerful pastors I've ever heard of. And if for those of you that have seen the movie, The Jesus Revolution, he was part of that movement at that time, 1972, 73. He was one of the holy rollers, as they called them in those days. And he led many, many, many lost souls to Christ. Why? He's a great speaker, I'll give him that, but the real reason was because when they looked at him, they saw themselves. They saw someone that had been through what they had been through, and they trusted him to lead them in the right direction. So that's what I always think of it. You know, was he Billy Graham? No, he was not Billy Graham. But at that time and that place, he was the best person to lead people to Christ. And he did in droves. And he's still doing that to this day. God knows our weaknesses far better than we know them ourselves. And he also knows what is needed to reach those he wants to reach. Perhaps those needs make you more qualified to serve than anyone else in this instance. He cares more about your heart for him than your shortcomings. Ponder that. Trust him to get you through uncomfortable situations and equip you to get the job done. That's really all I wanted to talk about today. I'll lead you now in prayer. Lord, gracious Heavenly Father, thank God for our strengths and weaknesses and the opportunities you provide for us for protecting us from our own threats. Thank you for providing us with opportunities to serve you in specific ways that only we can serve you. And thank you for equipping us to fulfill your purpose in our lives as well as those in the people surrounding us. And I pray that you give us opportunities to rely more fully on your strength and expertise than our own. I thank you for your time today.